So today, this is the fourth series that we've run of these, and today we're sort of focusing on communications and how to profile you as an individual and your business, and of course those two things are highly interlinked, as I'm sure you'll discover as we go through. So I'd like to invite our three representatives from the two successful hackathon prizes. We're particularly pleased that actually there was nobody from our competition there. Please come up. And what I'm just going to get them to do.
Good evening, guys. It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So we created Epilepsy in 20 hours at the TechCrunch hackathon. We were going against 90 other teams, about 750 hackers, and we actually came second, which was really surprising, and we were really happy about that. So my name's Phil. I'm a first-year student.
My name is Clarence, second-year student.
Yeah, and our team, well, we're actually 5, but one guy didn't show up at the conference the next day, where they took a much nicer picture of us. So that's the picture. Anyway, Epilepsy, it's an app that runs our intelligent algorithm, which we developed ourselves, in the background of your phone at all times to detect if you're having an epileptic seizure. And it's actually smart enough to differentiate between if you're walking, running, whatever. So if you're shaking, if it's in your pocket, or you drop your phone after a shake, it triggers an alarm. Now you have a few seconds to deactivate this alarm in case you're not having a seizure, so that we don't falsely contact hospitals, etc. But if you are having a seizure, it does a whole bunch of great things autonomously to get you medical attention quickly. So it calculates the nearest hospitals, and it automatically sends them your location, the context of your emergency, and it sends them your iOS health kit data. So basically, they have a medical file of you before they even know who you are, before they get to you, before you get to them. Secondly, it sends messages to all the people you've listed as emergency contacts. And this message contains a link to our web app. So, and it's fully responsive, which means it runs on any platform, on any device. And so basically, this web app allows all of your emergency contacts to see exactly where you're on a map and to get directions to you. So essentially, we've timed it. Your emergency contacts can have directions to you and know exactly where you are in less than 20 seconds of you actually having a seizure. So that was what we did in 20 hours at the hackathon. What do we plan on doing now? Well, we've had an enormously positive response of this app. And so we're currently working with the KCL Medical School. We're in talks with them to test it, to optimize the algorithm. But we also noticed that the second part of our algorithm, the part of calculating the nearest hospitals and contacting your emergency contacts, can be ported to other detection algorithms as well. So we've got a couple of algorithms we've got in mind that we're currently developing for diseases not like epilepsy, which affects about 1% of the population, but I'm not supposed to tell you guys, and I won't, but these diseases affect pretty much 100% of the population, and we've got algorithms that can detect them. So basically, and we're moving into wearable tech, so when our app launches, hopefully in early 2015, you're going to have the Apple Watch on, or other wearable tech that will be able to detect a number of diseases and get you medical attention quickly. That's Epilepsy, that's our concept. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up is Amar, who not only was one of the prize winners, but actually was the founder and president of the Tech Society, which is a student society that just seems to have taken off and has a life of its own. So I think you should deserve a prize for that as well. Coming to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go over what I built at TechCrunch Disrupt, and that was Quick Conference, and the name kind of speaks for itself. It's basically an app that allows you to make conference calling extremely easy and with minimal effort, so you don't have to manually add people to a call anymore. All you do is log in, choose your coworkers, and then it immediately notifies them about the conference call, and they can join with one tap. Why did we build this? I'm not going to lie, probably for the free Xboxes. but I mean, what came out of that was a lot of fun. I mean, I worked with Marcus on it, who's a KCL alumni. He's not here today because he's in Spain, probably celebrating the win, I guess. Yeah, it was good fun. It took us only 12 hours to build it, unlike most teams, because it was a fairly simple hack. But I think we won because of the complex conference calling features that we had built in store. And yeah, the app is available for anyone to try. You just search for Quick Conference on Google. Apart from that, I just want to say, I think a lot of credit goes to these guys who are members of KCL Tech. And the reason I'm so proud of them is because they're only first and second years, and when I was in first year, there were no hackathons. And it's great to see them come up with such a crazy idea, take it forward and win runners-up to one of the biggest prizes and biggest hackathons around. So that's all I've got to say, but yeah, thank you very much.
So next I'd like to introduce Dido Harding, Baroness Dido Harding now, who's the CEO of TalkTalk. Previously worked with a whole range of high street shops from Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Kingfishers, Thomas Cook. Was there anybody else sort of? No? Started her career at McKinsey. I just left the president of the student union, I think, filling his application form for McKinsey, but anyway, so perhaps you could pass on some tips for that. She's a non-exec at British Land. She did PPE at Oxford and then an MBA at Harvard. I took this straight from the thing I was given, and then thought, I wasn't quite sure that there needed to be a comma or something in here. She's married to an MP with 2 children and is a keen jockey. And I think the evidence is there. So over to you, Dido.
Well, I've got one slide in a sec. Yeah, as you can see, I fell off a horse a few times on Saturday, and it took me 3 days to admit that maybe I'd done something wrong. So, as you've just heard, I actually have a very corporate career. I've worked for a whole series of big companies, and about 5 years ago, I took a phone call from one Charles Dunstan, who I'd never met before, and Charles gave me a call on the advice of a mutual friend of ours and suggested that I come and meet him for a beer because he was thinking about demerging his second child, TalkTalk, from his first child, Carphone Warehouse. And this mutual friend had suggested that we might get on and I might enjoy running the business. So I feel I'm a bit sort of masquerading here in a session about sort of entrepreneurial startups because I'm the corporate person that came to work with the entrepreneur. And I thought I'd tell you a bit of the tale of TalkTalk and how Charles created it and what we've been trying to do together over the last 5 years. So TalkTalk began in 2006. And Charles would say that he has only ever had one idea, and that idea is called free. Free is a very, very powerful idea. We know that in TalkTalk. We know the good and the bad of free. So in 2006, TalkTalk began by launching free broadband. BT, who are our nemesis, were charging so much money that for phone calls and line rental that TalkTalk could afford to launch broadband for free, provided you took our phone product. The team at the time thought they might get 200,000 people to take the service in the first 6 months. Free is very, very powerful. They had 200,000 customers in the first 6 days. That's not a good thing. Actually, it creates chaos. So TalkTalk was born in chaos. Our main base is up in Manchester, and if you get into a taxi in Warrington and you say you're from TalkTalk and you get chatting and you ask them, how things, and they say, oh, your lot, they're much calmer than they were when they launched free broadband. And you go, what do you mean? Said, oh, we used to have people in taxis going mad. They were on the phone trying to get call centres to open. Everything fell apart because the demand was so great. Undaunted, because Charles is a fearless entrepreneur, the business pushed forward and they acquired 1 million customers in the first 9 months. We started by trying to define why we were around, what we stand for. Bigger corporates might call it their values. We don't. We call these our brighter basics, our basics in life. And they start by saying we exist because we actually want to make Britain better off. We're a young, disruptive, slightly chaotic challenger business, and we want to make Britain better off because we're around. And we aim to do that in 5 ways, and it starts with the customer. So our beginnings, we didn't really treat customers as if they had a choice. And we try now to think really hard that actually every single one of our customers can choose to go elsewhere every day. I wish the business really lived up to that properly every single day. It doesn't. It's a life's work to get a telecoms company to actually deliver every day. I'm sure all of you feel that if your broadband isn't working as you would like it to. I get the emails every day from customers telling me that. And we're trying to instill a culture that our customers could choose to walk out the door straight away. And actually you can't build a brand or a reputation for your business unless the underlying product or service is good enough. It doesn't matter how good the marketing, it doesn't matter how inspirational you are as a leader. If in the end you don't deliver what your customers want, you haven't got a sustainable business. We're the little guy in our market, and generally what we do, our big competitors think is wrong. So we launched a TV business 2 years ago. Our competitors spent £2 billion buying sports rights, and I joke that football isn't a game that we play. We haven't got any sports rights, but I've got 1.3 million TV customers now in the space of 2 years, and I've overtaken BT very, very quickly because we're doing something different. So we try to instill a spirit of we zig where the rest of the world zags. And we get a big grin on our face when big incumbent companies think that what we're doing is nuts. Then we think we must be onto something. We try very hard not to stereotype. And if you start with a set of ingredients that are, a team that's quite diverse to begin with, that's almost easier. So I think it's easier, and it'd be easier for all of you if you start your businesses, to start with a fresh slate than it is when you walk in. My peers in BT or in Tesco, where I used to work, actually have a harder job to encourage diversity because they're starting with a large embedded workforce that is quite tribal. So I'd love to take the credit for it. Actually, I sort of inherited it from the entrepreneurial growth. I think one of the ways that you get more diversity into the workplace is you ensure that there is enough competition in every market that new businesses that genuinely hire the very best people for each job succeed. I work in quite a regulated sector, and I hope that in 10 years' time you'll see a whole different set of competitors, because that's actually how you can be confident that talent is winning out in the end. Well, we have 100 people who work up in Stornoway in call centres, but all the rest of our call centre agents are offshore. We don't, purposefully, and I'm unashamed about it, we closed a lot of call centres, both onshore and offshore. The harsh reality was that our offshore agents did a better job. And we measure it based on customer satisfaction and whether customers have to call back again. So it did save us money, but it wasn't the reason that we changed. In the UK, we pay above the living wage, both the London living wage and outside London, for everyone who works for us. That's actually an easy thing for me to say, because everyone, including our call centre agents in Stornoway, are very highly qualified. Overseas, our agents generally have degrees and are paid significantly above the average wage in their communities. So, I think that's the right way for a business to behave. This is going to sound a bit weird, but because it was our fault, not someone else's, when things were really tough for us, and actually we all feel it still today, when things are going wrong, 99 out of 100 times in TalkTalk, it is because we in TalkTalk have cocked up. And we can do something about that. It's not out of our control. So we always believed that we could do better than we were currently doing. And that actually by taking that accountability, taking responsibility for what was happening, was a very empowering thing to say we believed we were better. Now, time will tell, but over the course of the last 5 years, we have got better by really facing into it and having the courage to say that we can do better than that. It would have been much more dispiriting if the business was struggling because our competitors had more money than us, or our competitors were doing things that we couldn't. It was because we were just making stupid mistakes. Every time I went to our call centres, and still today I go to our call centres, you only have to spend about 15 minutes on the phone listening to realise that we could do it so much better. So I perversely find my cup is always half full rather than half empty. And you'll find, I think that's a very common phenomenon with all entrepreneurs, a belief that you can make things better. And while you believe you can, you keep doing until you succeed.
much. Very, very good of Cath to come and meet us all this evening. We're tremendously grateful to you for your time here. I've got a whole series of questions for you, which we have co-created internally, and I'm sure there'll be time for people to ask more questions afterwards under Chris's chairmanship. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to get straight stuck in and ask you my very first. What were the main challenges you faced during your startup phase, Cath?
Do you know, I was just listening earlier, thinking of all these techie guys, you guys doing all your kind of competitions and things that were going on, and thinking back to when I first started my business. I invested in a little Apple Mac computer, which cost a lot of money. It was £1,500 for a Mac Classic. And if I wanted to, I had no kind of contacts for sourcing or finding things. I had this big idea in my head of what I wanted to do. And the only way I could find people to make things and do things was through the yellow pages. And I should think there's people here who don't know what the yellow pages are. You know, so if I said to my stepdaughter that, she wouldn't have a clue. But it was that thing of, I had this idea I passionately believed in. And I wrote down here in my dyslexic way what you were talking about a wrong idea that you prove right. What I wanted to do was something that wasn't out there, that was a kind of, it's sort of almost the opposite of what people were buying into. There wasn't anything in this kind of vintage, bright, cheerful kind of, I had a sort of concept of what I could do, but it was how did I get that into practical kind of business. So I had a lovely lady Dot, who was an out-of-work actress, who would make me Annie-Ball covers up the road, which were probably flammable. It wasn't so much health and safety, but it was this thing of having the idea, but how did one actually get it off the ground? And so the biggest challenge was actually learning from my mistakes and having to kind of keep having faith that the thing I was doing didn't fit in with everything else, but I really needed to believe in it and kind of stick to it.
But in terms of how you actually obtained investment, how did you actually go around and actually present yourself to investors and bring in people that were tuned into you, who would appeal to you and who you felt you could work with?
So I probably, on paper, but not in result, luckily, made a really enormous mistake. Because when the business got to be about 10 years old, I started being faced with, I knew that things were kind of getting a bit serious. You know, it had gone from being a couple of corner shops that I had like Japanese license partners wanting to sign extended deals. I had lots of people knocking on the door, and I had a really good team that needed to grow and be allowed to thrive. And I knew that I wasn't qualified to make the right decisions on certain things like that. It all worked out because in amongst it, the lovely American expert went back to America, and I think it was better for him and for everybody. And the managing director, the general director, was this lovely girl who had come to do the day-to-day job. She and I connected totally, and we had a decade together where the business, we just reset everything. It was such a sort of wonderful feeling to find a like-minded person. She was very organized and knew about departments and structure and could do all the bits that I couldn't do. And she trusted me. The most amazing thing she did was when I said, I remember sitting in this meeting with my American CEO saying, I'd really like to get into sewing and making things, and it feels, I really love, you know, all this sort of sewing baskets and stuff, and our business is about being creative and making and doing things, and I think we should make a line of sewing product. And him saying, but nobody sews these days. You know, we all go to wherever and buy throwaway things and this and that. And this lovely girl, Jo, said, you know, go for it if you really believe in it and you believe that's right for what we're doing. And it was totally unfashionable. She would allow me to take that risk. It's learning from those experiences. So I sold, to cut a long story short, I sold a large chunk of the business. But actually, it was a really good thing to do because at the time, it paid for some things I needed to pay for, which was really relevant at the time. And I did it with my eyes wide open, thinking, if I basically screw up now, I've done it with my eyes wide open, and I've made this judgment, and I'm not going to ever feel I've messed up. So I then had this incredible decade of growing the business with these small investors who were a bit like herding cats, but very friendly cats and whatever, and it all worked out really nicely, and they were happy because the business was growing and they could see their money growing, so everyone was happy. And then when it by then the business was big enough that we got into there's a small pool really of the right size private equity that come sniffing around. And so you do a beauty parade and appoint the right bankers, then weigh up all the different things. And luckily for me, I could make a choice in with a team of who I thought were the best brand fit. And that there ought to really be a good emotional connection with customers, product, brand, everything that we do. And what I'm really satisfied by is when we do surveys with customers, we've just had some big customer research back, they say that they want this emotional connection with the brand. And I'm so happy and excited that that's still there. So from that, when we look to innovation, we look to, it gets harder to think up new categories. So for example, you know, there's sewing everywhere now, and so you can't suddenly say sewing. And I'm always thinking of new things and bits, and I'm just looking at my iPhone cover, and I think, actually, what's going to be next? There's an evolution of what's practical. And I think entrepreneurs always have to look out of the box. But to be successful, I'm guessing, there has to be a kind of good balance of risk. You have to kind of be able to take enough risk, but also have enough practical consideration in that, is my experience. Because that blind risk is very difficult. But it's that sort of sense, for me, my own experience is trying to be practical. How do I join up my insane wish to take risk and try out new things and try out new ideas with something that's actually tangible and practical? My thing was, if I can keep the brand really, really focused till it gets an identity, I feel very proud of something that's recognizable, of creating something that I hope was unique and is recognizable. And that moment was such an extraordinary kind of, it was like a huge relief thinking, now I can start kind of doing things with
Thank you. And then really one final question before I hand back to Chris for panel questions with all of you. If you had one single piece of advice for a budding entrepreneur in the audience, what would it be?
I just find this a really hard one to answer. I think you have to so passionately love what you're doing and not do it for the cash. Because I get so many people coming asking, and they're all interested, not all actually, that's a really bad thing to say, but such a high percentage of people are thinking about what money they're going to make out of an idea. And that's to me a sideline of, you know, it's not what I set out to do. I set out to do something I was passionate about as a concept, and that was a result of it. And I just think there's so many ups and downs and different bits, and it's just that genuine passion for what you do really helps. I always like to think of things as customer first. And so I knew that I should try and achieve X% margin in an ideal world, but I knew that I couldn't when I was only making 6 of something. So I basically was running a side job of doing an interior design business to pay things while I built brand loyalty and following. And I just felt at the end of the day, the price of the product has to rule those decisions.
In all honesty, I don't like to think of sort of challenges from being a woman. I have lots of challenges from being Dido. Rather than the sort of the category of being a woman. But for me personally, I was smiling listening to Cath talking about your sense that you're not good enough. By the way, I have all the formal education, it still has left me with the sense that I'm not good enough. So if I could say one thing to myself in my early 20s as a young woman, it would be yourself, stop pretending to be a man. And I certainly spent a chunk. I certainly spent a chunk of time at Tesco pretending to be a man. And once I stopped doing that, I was A, much happier, and B, much more successful.
When I don't think, am I talking to a man or woman? And if I'm treated in a way that I don't feel is right, it doesn't matter if it comes, I've had the same situation from men or women, really. So I think I kind of ignore it all. I mean, I think to me the most important thing for women in business is all the kind of practical support that's required, which is fantastic that that's really kicking in. I've sort of always said at work, I never won't have made it until we have a creche. We still haven't got a creche. So there's practical considerations of being a woman in business. And I like what you're talking about, being a man who doesn't want to travel, you know, tailor-making jobs to work for people. But it genuinely hasn't been a problem. I think my own stupidity has been a problem rather than being a woman.
I don't know, how did you deal with getting your brand recognized by your customers? Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
How is it? For us, trying to bring the personality of the brand internally has been important. So we've done some silly things. We like to describe the business. We used Star Wars analogy quite a lot, that we're the Rebel Alliance, and you know, either BT or Sky, the Death Star. We broke the world record for the largest lightsaber fight. We gave 3,500 people a lightsaber each in a big shed in Manchester and broke world record. And that's quite a sort of silly talk thing to do. We make a lot of use of our sponsorship of the X Factor internally. So X Factor finals weekend in Wembley Arena, the entire audience, it's 10,000 people each night, they're either a TalkTalk customer or a TalkTalk employee or a TalkTalk supplier, and we give every member of our staff a ticket to X Factor. And we try to connect them with the brand and just be a little bit different.
I mean, often people come with ideas for the brand, and I think that's such a lovely product, I'll buy it somewhere. Does it suit or reflect what we do, yes or no? So it's a strictness of what is relevant. And I think if you build that, then people begin to recognise the brand and its values, and it's all very kind of consistent. And that's probably the most important thing with building a brand, is that you decide on, you know, you were talking about free and all your attitude and things like that to how the brand builds up. For us, it's this bright, cheerful, fresh product, modern, vintage. Does it connect to what it is? And if we stray from that, it's really interesting, it's not successful. And so there's a kind of, we learn from lessons as well as doing it. But I think having a conviction in what you do helps. You have to have the idea or the product in the first place and then have conviction. And then there's products that just I'm trying to think of something that hasn't worked at all. So I made very wintry, very dark products one season. Because when my lovely American friend arrived, he said, oh, you need to be really seasonal. And I used to make just bright, cheerful products all year round. He said, you need a wintry range with autumn tones, and you need a dark range and so that. So we made all this stuff, and it was like, I think it took 3 sample sales or whatever it was, like this massive amount of things, get rid of this blooming dark stuff that was loitering around. So it's like, again, not focusing on the core brand values. There was a whole kind of collection that was dingy, basically. It was like, no, trying to please, idiot here, thinking, okay, I better, do these things.
Well, I have personally made so many mistakes. Lots of products. My background is retailing, so I bought a lot of different products, and many of them have failed. I think I'm learning so much listening to Cath, because I work with another entrepreneur, and so many of the things you've said, if Charles Dunstan were here, he would have said exactly the same thing. And I think one of the great traits I've learned from him is that you have to subsume your ego and be honest when things go wrong. And the really successful entrepreneurs do that. They have brilliant ideas, but they also have really shit ones. And the best entrepreneurs are the ones who go, yesterday I thought that was brilliant and it's not now, and on we go. And being able to do that is the secret to long-term success, because nobody gets it right all the time. And if you want to keep leading an organisation or creating new businesses, you've got to be able to look yourself honestly in the mirror and go, that's not right, and move on.
Well, I'd like us to thank both our guest speakers for being honest.
I've had a great evening here at King's College London. Great to be on stage with Dido Harding and hear all her pearls of wisdom. And it's always so inspiring to meet all the students and hear all the questions. And I'm now sort of heading off back to the office tomorrow with a whole new kind of set of puzzles and challenges that they've thrown up anyway. Great. But it's great to be here.